So yesterday was the anniversary of the Protestant Reformation. Naturally, I was gonna make a video on it, but also naturally, I am late. But I have been wanting to make a video about the Protestant Reformation for a while now. A lot of people see it as a black or white issue. If you ask a Catholic, they will say this is the worst thing that's ever happened to the church. There is some truth to that. If you ask a Protestant, they will say this is the most amazing thing that could have happened to the church. And if you ask an Orthodox Christian, they're gonna say that there's truth to both sides. So first thing I want to establish is that the Protestant Reformation is actually way more complex than people give it credit for, right? It all started with Martin Luther. Now, Luther actually was going to become a lawyer. He went through this whole issue while he was aboard a boat. He claims that God saved them that day from drowning. So he instead decided to switch his path from pursuing law and decided to become a priest. Luther actually served in the Catholic Church, but Luther noticed that there were a lot of instances where the church was abusing its power. And I agree on this. In fact, Catholics agree on this, Orthodox agree on this, obviously Protestants agree on this. And this is because around this time in Europe, Catholicism was the biggest sect of Christianity. There were so many Catholics that it became difficult to coordinate things with one another, and a lot of them did abuse their power. A lot of them just created new dogmatic teachings that were just not there when Christianity began. So on October 31st, 1517, Luther said enough is enough, and this is where we get the 95 Theses. So these theses were ideas to reform the church. They were looking into issues that the church had, all from Luther's perspective, of course, and he was essentially challenging the church to change. Now, there's a lot of history packed into this, so I'm gonna have to summarize things for the sake of this video. But after the Protestant Reformation began, one of the biggest issues that I have with the Reformation itself, and Catholics also have these issues with the Reformation, and so do Orthodox, is that everything became a mess. A lot of people agreed with Luther, and they were like, we don't want to continue being part of the Catholic Church. But the whole premise of it was to reform the church, not to create new churches. But a lot of people did that anyways. They left the church and they created their own separate churches. So the Protestant Reformation was really messy. There was little to no coordination and things just spiraled out of control. And we're seeing the bad downsides of this to this day. So as of today, there are between 180 to 47,000 Protestant denominations. Some of the major ones are Baptists, Methodists, Lutherans, obviously after Luther, Pentecostals, Presbyterians, and Congregationalists. There's also the Anglican Church, there's a bunch of other sects, and this is a huge issue. As the Reformation continued, people could just not agree on theology, and instead of having councils like the church did in the past to sort out their differences, they just said, well, I'm just gonna make my own church and I'm gonna start my own branch of Christianity. And these things happened over the smallest theological differences. Oh, you disagree with me on this minor topic? I'm making my own church. This is why a lot of people that convert to Christianity nowadays, they don't know where to go. I mean, there's so many denominations, and the leading factor of this is because of the Protestant Reformation. There was no control over this. There was no uniformity. There was no unity. They all just separated a lot and a lot and a lot more. And our God is not the God of confusion. So a lot of people are confused, and this is why there's a split again and again. Even to this day, there's more and more denominations that are coming out. This is because of the Protestant Reformation. Now, the craziest thing is that this all could have been avoided had the Catholic Church reasoned things out with Luther. So the Reformation, again, began in 1517. The biggest response from the Catholic Church was a movement called the Counter-Reformation, and you see this in the Council of Trent. The Council of Trent was held in 1545 and up to 1563. So I mean, just look at the huge time gap between the Reformation when it started and when the Council of Trent got together to sort things out. And Luther died in 1546. So the Council of Trent had just begun, and Luther was literally about to die, and he died while the Council of Trent was still ongoing. And this has kind of always been an issue with the Catholic Church. The official response always takes too long, and the issues are not ironed out in time. Same thing happened with the Great Schism 500 years earlier. The Roman Catholic Church, the Church of the West, just allowed the Church of the East to do their own thing. They split from them. And now there are many Catholics that say, well, the filioque, we were wrong on the filioque. I mean, it's good to admit when you are wrong or when there are things that just didn't work out the way you wanted, but you are so late in your response. Had the Council of Trent taken place shortly after the Protestant Reformation, who knows what would have happened? Maybe things would have ironed themselves out in a better way. And maybe, just maybe, there wouldn't be all of these thousands of Protestant denominations. I mean, this is just silly. It's insane. So this is nonsense. I don't agree with this. I think many of these denominations just need to stop existing. Again, our God is not the God of confusion, but of truth and clarity. So this whole thing needs to stop. You guys need to just hash things out and just give it up. Jesus calls us to be one just as him and the Father are one. There is no place in the church for this kind of nonsense and garbage. But again, it is true that the Catholic Church did need a check on itself, because for a very long time people were abusing their power within the church. But perhaps there could have been a compromise there, where some of the things that were mentioned in the Council of Trent could have been applied to the church as they were, but also Luther could have compromised, and the Protestants could have for once gathered together instead of all going in their own separate ways, and that could have resulted in a unified church that is more in tune with people who are abusing power. So perhaps we could have had the best of both worlds, and the church could have remained as one, as a universal church, you know, wink wink. But nevertheless, we are here today, and just because things didn't get resolved back then doesn't mean we can't resolve them today. So as I try to summarize the very lengthy Protestant Reformation, my hope is that with this video I can say things can still be ironed out and we can still go back to being a single unified church. Again, I find the idea of even more than 100 denominations ridiculous. We need to go back, we need to get together, we need to have a council between Catholics, Protestants, and Orthodox, and we need to iron these things out.